What was meant to be a moment of healing has now turned into a political firestorm. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has just taken a direct swipe at President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and Nigerians are divided. Was Tinubu's visit to Plateau State too late? Was it just a political show, or a genuine act of leadership? And why are people saying this tragedy is now being turned into a political battleground? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you see this entire situation. Plateau State, once again, has become a symbol of pain, fear, and unanswered questions. In what many are calling yet another devastating chapter in Nigeria's ongoing security crisis, communities across the state were thrown into chaos after brutal attacks left families shattered and entire neighborhoods in mourning. Survivors describe scenes that are difficult to forget, and even harder to explain. Late at night, when most people were asleep, the silence was broken by sudden gunfire. Panic spread instantly. Parents grabbed their children. Some ran into the bushes. Others hid in fear, hoping the danger would pass. But for many, it didn't. Homes were destroyed. Lives were lost. And by morning, what remained was a community struggling to come to terms with yet another tragedy. For the people of Plateau, this is not just news, it's a painful pattern. Over the years, the state has faced repeated waves of violence, often linked to complex issues like land disputes, ethnic tensions, and armed groups operating in rural areas. Each time, the story feels the same. Attack, loss, mourning, promises, then silence. And that cycle is exactly what is frustrating many Nigerians today. Because the big question keeps coming back. Why does this keep happening? As news of the latest killing spread, outrage quickly followed. Social media platforms were flooded with reactions, anger, sadness, and frustration. People demanded answers. They demanded protection. And most importantly, they demanded action. All eyes turned to the federal government. In moments like this, leadership is expected, not just in words, but in presence. Eventually, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu made his move. He traveled to Plateau State to commiserate with victims and their families. He met with local leaders, security officials, and community stakeholders. He expressed condolences and reassured Nigerians that efforts were being made to restore peace. On camera, the visit appeared solemn and respectful. A president standing with grieving citizens. For some, this was exactly what leadership should look like, showing up, listening, and acknowledging the pain of the people. But for others, it raised deeper concerns. Because while the visit brought attention to the tragedy, it also reminded many of a recurring reality. These visits often come after the damage has already been done. And that's where the tension begins. Some Nigerians started asking uncomfortable questions. Could this have been prevented? Why does help seem to arrive only after lives are lost? What is being done behind the scenes to stop the next attack? For families who have lost loved ones, these questions are not political, they are personal. They are about safety. They are about survival. And as the nation tried to process the president's visit, a new layer of controversy began to build. Because while some were still mourning, others were already analyzing. And soon, what started as a tragedy would evolve into something even bigger. A national debate about leadership, responsibility, and the true meaning of action in times of crisis. And just when it seemed like the story couldn't get more intense, a powerful voice stepped in. And everything changed. Just as Nigerians were still trying to process the president's visit to Plateau State, the conversation took a sharp turn. Because then, Atiku Abubakar stepped in. And he didn't whisper. He didn't hold back. He fired directly at the heart of the issue, and by extension, at President Bola Ahmed Tinubu himself. In a strongly worded reaction that quickly spread across news platforms and social media, Atiku questioned not just the visit, but the timing of it. To him, this wasn't about appearances. It was about urgency. He suggested that the president's condolence visit came too late, after the damage had already been done, after lives had already been lost, after families had already been broken. And that single argument struck a nerve. Because deep down, many Nigerians have asked the same question before. Why does leadership always seem to arrive after tragedy, not before it? But Atiku didn't stop there. He went further, shifting the focus from sympathy to accountability. According to him, what Nigerians need right now is not just condolences, not just visits, not just carefully worded speeches, but decisive, visible action. The kind of action that prevents attacks. The kind of action that reassures citizens that their lives actually matter. His message was simple, but powerful. Stop reacting. Start protecting. And just like that, the narrative began to change. This was no longer just about a tragic attack in Plateau. It became a bigger conversation about leadership, responsibility, and the role of government in times of crisis. For many Nigerians, Atiku's words echoed their frustration. They've seen this pattern too many times. Violence breaks out. The nation mourns. Leaders visit. Promises are made. And then, everything fades, until the next tragedy. So when Atiku spoke, some people saw it as bold. They saw it as necessary. They saw it as someone finally saying what others were thinking. But not everyone agreed. Because almost immediately, the backlash began. Critics accused Atiku of politicizing a tragedy. They argued that moments of national grief should not be turned into opportunities for political attacks. Some asked tough questions of their own. Where was this level of criticism when previous administrations faced similar crises? Is this about the victims, or about politics? Supporters of President Tinubu also pushed back strongly. They pointed out that the president did visit Plateau. That he did meet with victims. That he did show concern. And in a country where leaders are often criticized for being distant, they argued that showing up should count for something. So now, the nation found itself caught in a familiar, but uncomfortable, position. Two powerful political figures. Two opposing narratives. One painful tragedy at the center of it all. And the real issue. It risked being overshadowed. Because while politicians exchanged words, families were still grieving, communities were still recovering, and fear still lingered in the air. Yet, whether people agreed with Atiku or not, one thing was clear. He had successfully shifted the conversation. From sympathy to scrutiny. From condolences to questions. And once those questions are asked, they don't just disappear. They grow louder. They spread faster. And they demand answers. But what happened next would prove that this wasn't just a political clash. It was something deeper. Because when Nigerians themselves began to react, the country didn't just respond. Once Atiku Abubakar's comments hit the public space, the reaction was instant and explosive. This was no longer just a discussion between political figures like Atiku and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, it had become something bigger. It had become a national conversation. Across social media platforms, radio shows, and street corners, Nigerians began to weigh in, and the country quickly split into different camps. On one side were those who strongly agreed with Atiku. To them, his words weren't political, they were truthful. They argued that Nigeria has seen too many condolence visits and not enough concrete solutions. For them, the issue isn't whether a president shows up, it's whether attacks can be prevented in the first place. They pointed to a painful pattern. Violence erupts. Lives are lost. Leaders visit. Promises are made. And then, nothing changes. So when Atiku said the visit came late and called for real action, they saw it as a necessary wake-up call. Some even went further, saying this reflects a deeper problem with how security is handled across the country. But on the other side, the reaction was just as strong. Supporters of President Tinubu pushed back hard. They argued that leadership is not just about policies, it's also about presence. In times of tragedy, people want to see their leader. They want to feel acknowledged. They want to know they are not alone. And in that sense, they believe Tinubu did the right thing by going to Plateau. They also questioned Atiku's timing. To them, criticizing the president in the middle of a national tragedy felt unnecessary, and even insensitive. They asked, why turn this into politics when people are still grieving? And just like that, the debate intensified. But beyond these two loud groups, there was another voice, quieter, but just as important. The voice of everyday Nigerians. People who are not interested in political arguments. People who are not choosing sides. People who are simply tired. Tired of the violence. Tired of the fear. Tired of hearing the same stories over and over again. For them, this isn't about Atiku or Tinubu. It's about survival. It's about waking up every day and wondering if their community could be next. It's about raising families in an environment where safety is never guaranteed. And for these Nigerians, the political back and forth feels distant from their reality. Because while leaders debate, they are the ones living with the consequences. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. Because it reveals something deeper than politics. It reveals a growing frustration. A growing demand. A growing sense that something must change. The truth is, when tragedy meets politics, emotions run high. Words carry more weight. Actions are judged more harshly. And every statement, whether from Atiku or Tinubu, becomes more than just an opinion. It becomes a symbol of something bigger. Right now, Nigeria is not just reacting to a statement. It's reacting to years of pain, repeated patterns, and unanswered questions. And that's why this moment matters. Because it's not just about who is right or wrong. It's about what happens next. Will this debate lead to real change? Or will it fade away, just like so many others before it? One thing is certain. Nigerians are watching. And this time, they're not just listening. They're demanding answers. So here's the big question. Was Atiku right to speak out? Or should leaders put politics aside during moments like this? Drop your opinion in the comments, because this conversation is far from over. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because we break down the stories that everyone is talking about, but few truly understand.